to see how badly it's grown.
Okay, it is 11:22, and I want to give enough time for the next speaker, so I promise you I'll be done, so you have time to set up. Okay, I'm here to present a paper called Endpoint Protection Zone. And before I start, I want to thank some people. First, the co-authors of the paper, my advisor, Dr. Huan Fu, my other advisor, I guess you could call him, is a fellow professor of Dr. Fu's, Tao Xu, and two undergraduate students. One of them is Patrick Miraco, and the other one is Warren Ma. And they were funded by the NSF, so I want to thank the NSF and Oakland University for paying for my trip, particularly the department head, Dr. Hunter Wu. All this is getting recorded, so all right, that's enough of that. Let's see. For those of you that are familiar with vehicle networks, this is a familiar slide. If you're not familiar with it, then I want to make sure I include it. A vehicle network basically allows cars to broadcast precise location information to each other. And this has great benefits when it comes to safety. However, it's got issues when it comes to privacy. And so the purpose of the paper that I'm presenting today is to look at some privacy concerns that depend on these precise locations. One of the things you see in the literature, well, you see two things. One is pseudo-IDs to protect the privacy of the vehicles at the MAC layer. And the other is like spatial cloaking and other types of methods to protect privacy of any kind of mobile device at the application layer. Now, what makes vehicle networks a little bit different is there's two different protocols for handling this network traffic. We have WSMP in the vehicle networks, which is not usually it's not used in other networks. So I just want to make sure that you guys are familiar with the separate protocols for V2V communication, vehicle-to-vehicle communication, and V2I communication, which would be through the traditional IP, TCP type of method. Let's see, if you take away nothing else from this presentation, please take away this three simple words: protect your endpoints. That's really the whole point of this presentation. Motorists are likely to use location-based services whenever it is that they get deployed. They're likely to use them extensively, according to the literature. Unfortunately, the people that might be monitoring that application software, the administrators of the LVS, be able to call Jerry Springer and tell him, hey, I think somebody just left Charlie Sheen's house, and identify an endpoint if that LBS happens to be activated at an endpoint location. So map databases are public information. Let's go ahead and press on. So these map databases can be used by anybody to de-anonymize. I want to also make a distinction between a regular location-based service, which might just be a single snapshot, and a continuous, precise location query, where it's continuously asking information. So here, I just took this picture of my own Android device this morning. You can kind of see this blue dot, which is the Rio Hotel that we're all in right now. This would be an example of a continuous, precise, well, I'm not sure how precise it is, but other applications could be precise. So basically, if Google can identify my phone, he's going to know where I am, assuming I'm the one in possession of my phone. If I'm not in possession of my phone, somebody stole my phone, If he spends a whole lot of time in one location, like his house, they could go find the guy that took my phone, right? They could even identify who it is. So anyway, that's the idea there. Now, normally in location-based services, the general protection method is spatial cloaking. The idea is you get KS privacy, K being the number of items that you're anonymizing, and S being the spatial distance. So here if we have K is, let's say this is 1, 1, and there's 3 vehicles, here we have a space of 1 and K of 3. So I'm able to, if I only know these 3 are here, then there's a 1/3 chance of me guessing which one is the person who's really my target. The problem is under continuous precise location queries, you can take a lot of snapshots of these things. And you can see here, we have cars 1 and 2 and 5 in this square. We have 1 and 2 and 5 in this square. And if we know for sure that they had to be in the same kind of a trajectory, we can throw out number 1, that can't be it anymore. So, it can throw out 3 because that one wasn't in the first one. So it's only going to be 2 or 5. So if he continues along, as he might in a vehicular type of a mobility model, then you can eventually isolate which is your target from just, you wouldn't need any identifier, just the location information alone. And I think the other thing is, especially in the early stages of any new LBS, there might only be 1 or 2 people that will use it. So you're not getting much anonymity if there's not any other users to anonymize with. Just to get a tighter look at this de-anonymization thing, we have a vehicle that's going to communicate V to I, or V to V, I guess, would be wireless communication to this RSU. And the RSU is going to connect to the internet. The RSU will have a router and that'll bounce out to whatever the LBS server is. And you can see here that both of them are going to be able to determine the precise location of this vehicle. Assuming it starts off with the location of his house, they'll be able to go to the map database and de-anonymize that location. If it's a CP, this LQ situation, a continuous precise situation, you can continuously track it. Now, in extreme situations, a person might, let's suppose the person decides, well, no, I'm not going to access the LBS, but I'll still broadcast my basic safety message. Google will pull up one of its trucks and say, well, we want to know where you are, and we'll just listen to your safety message, and then once you activate, we'll track from that location and see where you were, where you go after that. So that's an extreme case, but it's something to think about, and it kind of showcases the 2 different protocol stacks. Now, why is this problem important? Well, some people say it isn't. Some people think privacy is either impossible or it doesn't matter. It typically appears that the 2 groups that need privacy the most are criminals and law enforcement. Either one of them wants privacy. The NSA doesn't want us to know what they're doing, and the people the NSA are after doesn't want anybody to know what they're doing. So probably also high-profile individuals, the Charlie Sheen class example, might want to do that. But just setting that whole question aside, there is an increasing vulnerability from these LBS applications. Maybe it's not an important issue. I think it gets a lot of press. And there really aren't any standards established yet. They're starting to gel, but the problem is there's so many issues outside of technology that need to be addressed before we can really fix this. But one thing's for sure, the endpoints of a trajectory of a vehicle are particularly vulnerable to map de-anonymization. So if you can get the person's endpoint, you might be able to track them. Let's think of an example. Here's an example that we might look at. This fellow here is driving down the street. That's the best I can do in Visio, guys. It's ridiculous. But anyway, and on his dashboard is the cover charges of different bars. So this is findmybar.com or whatever it might be. It could be findmyhospital.com. It could be findmy, I don't know what, police-station.com, findmycasino.com. We're in Las Vegas. But maybe the person doesn't want anybody to know he's looking for a casino, right? So the person wants to protect his privacy. We're going to assume for the purpose of this presentation that the person's application here requires an account sign up. You got to log in. And that not all people desire privacy, but, oh yeah, that's good. Not all people desire privacy. And then the third one is the LBS is accessing the internet through, the LBS client is accessing it through multi-hop networking, not through the cell network. Just to start with some assumptions. So how do we solve this problem? Our proposed solution is we divide up the geography into grids, squares, and everybody in a certain square uses the same login. Now, if they do that, of course, you're not going to know the exact person who's logged in, but you could still provide local advertising because they're all in the same geographical area. So there's a little trade-off there. The LBS does not activate while it's in its own endpoint protection zone, EPZ. And so the administrator can't really tell which LBS user is active, let alone if it's, they don't know if there's 4 or 5 LBS users active right now. They not only don't know which one is the person, they don't even know if the person is one of them. I call it the Edward Snowden effect. You know, the Edward Snowden effect was he's flying, he's not in the plane to Bolivia, but they still stopped the plane. He wasn't in any plane. So what's the anonymity level there? I mean, more than 1, more than 2. All right, so now, basically, if we take that type of approach, dividing it into a grid, we're going to have a total number of V vehicles, and whatever the grid size is, that ratio is going to be the endpoint protection zone size. If you're familiar with the mathematics of anonymity set sizes, we don't need to go into all that right now. Basically, K is that. Most of the people that study privacy prefer to look at the Shannon entropy level of the anonymity set size rather than the anonymity set size itself, because it seems like it's such a huge number if you have 60 cars or whatever. But it's really, how many different pieces of information you need to slice it up with. So we use this method, and we assume that all the cars are equally likely to be chosen. So we're going to be fancy that. Now, this is, I think, a good metric too, and I added it in the paper, is the tracking probability. If you have 100 cars and 99 of them are all in one little cluster and one of them's off by himself, one of those cars can be tracked. But you might have 50 of them that are in a group, and then 50 onesie-twosie ones. And so there's only 50% of the system is safe from an attack. So I measured basically the chance of having only one LBS user in the endpoint protection zone. So it's a tracking probability. If there's only one from your EPZ, you've got to be it. Now, the simulation setup, basically, I took the MMTS traffic mobility model that you can get on the website. It's in our references. And so it had realistic road paths and realistic traffic flows. They're not real. The best I can do is realistic. They're still, better than just a grid system. If we use a grid system, the grid would, mess it up. So we didn't do that. And we counted the vehicles that originated in that endpoint protection zone. We only have 3 or 4 more slides left here, and they're all like this. Basically, if you had a critical mass of people in the endpoint protection zone, you didn't have a privacy problem, you were safe, you had a lot of anonymity. But if you were in a really remote area, a sparsely populated area, the system doesn't work. Same thing is true here for the entropy. And again, these show 10% of the vehicles with using the LPS and 20%, both of which could be optimistic, both of which could be pessimistic. We don't know, but ultimately you can kind of see that from the prior slide here that some of these had 50 or 30 people in it at the big endpoint protection zones. But with the rural one, it didn't really go over 1 or 2 or 3. And then the tracking probability is the number, it's probably the most interesting result we got. There's a point at which the tracking probability is just you're going to get tracked. But there's a threshold where it really starts to come down. And we found that based on the density sizes of rural, it was roughly a 500 by 500 or 750 by 750 square endpoint protection zone. So that where they were basically only 5% or 10% of the cars were 100% trackable. Still not perfect, but better than nothing. So basically the conclusion is that the EPZ, the endpoint protection zone system, can protect endpoint vulnerability. The anonymity level does not depend on the number of active vehicles. Even if only 1 vehicle is active, you still get the anonymity of your zone. Whereas most of your privacy systems, you have to have that many vehicles active for you to complete the privacy. If you wanted to, you could create false IDs. You could maybe have friends and family join your system so that you got some anonymity. And then lastly, it is limited because of the density dependence, and you can't really use it while you're in your EPZ either, which might be when you want to use it. If you want to turn on that location-based service while you're near your house, then you can't get the privacy protection. So, that's 17 minutes and 30 seconds. Hopefully we'll get some time for the next person. These are the references. I will put these slides on my website, and if you want, you can email me, and I'm always looking for collaborators to help me out with privacy research, so any of you guys would be welcome. Takeaway message, protect your inputs. Any questions?
Okay, I have a question about the configuration of the cluster, right? Privacy cluster. How important is it? Because you can choose a square,
Right.
a rectangular shape, but also you can define it the way you want. It can be a triangular shape, it can be a trapeze or whatever.
We could gerrymander it like the United States Congress, right? I mean, we could just slice out whoever we wanted.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean,
Cut it like they cut the district or whatever. But the question is, how can that affect the performance of the result? The result you actually have here. And also, some of this system or the existing system, you are the user, you want to prevent Google to track you, but you don't have the information about how this feature or this cluster is done. So how can you deal with that lack of information in trying to keep the privacy?
Well, a couple questions there. One of them is, when I first started studying this, I took a look at my own county, my own little subdivision and township and everything was in a nice square in my particular neighborhood. And so I thought, but then when I looked at the map more carefully, there were some places where there's a lot of residences, and some were some open fields, parks, nothing, right? Maybe nobody lives there. Maybe. And And so I decided that I'll take a well-known mobility model and start with that. But I would like to look at that, but I never did look at the gerrymandering solution. Now, as far as the way this would get implemented, the LBS software would have to enforce those zones. So they would choose whatever the zones would be. The company that makes the LBS would have to do that. Does that answer your question?
And also there's some kind of reason, special reasoning that got to be involved here. The location of the car or the vehicle is looked at a point, a single point.
Yes.
But the size of the car, depending on the cluster or the definition of the size of the cluster, can be relevant here in the space that the car occupies.
Yes, that's the whole idea. We made different sizes. But the idea is when I sign up, it required a login sign up. When I sign up, I'm going to tell it what my location is, my home location is, and it's going to give me a zone. It's going to give me the credentials for that zone.
So these location-based services would have to implement this at their own location
Yep.
in order to provide you that protection.
Yep. The company making the LBS would have to want to do this. If they don't want to do it, I mean, if Jerry Springer findmycasino.com, don't trust it.
And there's no guarantee that they might say that they do, but how do you verify that?
How do you do that right now? With anything, absolutely. How do we know Google's really doing what they say they do? I don't know. I'm trusting them. But when it comes to privacy and trust, there's all kinds of loopholes there. I want to give enough time for the next person. It was 21 minutes, and I think you have a full time to set up. Any questions? We would talk about